on Capitol Hill, where at this hour, the CEO of Norfolk Southern is testifying before a Senate committee. Alan Shaw has been facing tough questions really for weeks now over the rail company's safety practices in the wake of last month's toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. And now he has some explaining to do before Congress. Shaw has apologized more than once for the derailment, and he also says that his company is making changes and will do right by the people of East Palestine. Let's get straight to Sunlen Serfaty, who's watching this very important testimony on from Washington right now. Sunlen, what have you heard so far?
Well, certainly, Kate, there was a sense of frustration among many in the panel for the residents of East Palestine. But we did just hear from the CEO of Norfolk Southern, of course, the company and the person specifically that has had so much criticism in the aftermath of this train derailment. And we heard from Mr. Shaw. He said he is deeply sorry of what happened, and he promised to see this through, to get it right for the residents there. And he said point blank, it was clear safety mechanisms that we had in place were not enough. Here's more of what he had to say.
I am determined to make this right. Norfolk Southern will clean the site safely, thoroughly, and with urgency. You have my personal commitment. Norfolk Southern will get the job done and help East Palestine thrive.
Now, in the lead up to this hearing, the company has released a slew of new safety requirements that they are regulating, essentially self-regulating in the aftermath of this derailment. Money invested into the community to help with the cleanup, more resources on the ground. So they've made plenty of promises, but for many, of course, in the community and many on Capitol Hill, this just simply is not enough. And we heard from the two senators from Ohio today, a Republican and a Democrat, and they have a bipartisan piece of legislation that they are putting forward to put more strict regulations in the railroad industry. This is something that they talked about at length, say that the people of East Palestine deserve this. And they specifically called on the CEO to publicly endorse this legislation today. Kate, that is something that he did not do during his opening statements. But as this ongoing hearing continues, perhaps he most likely will be asked if he endorses that piece of legislation. Kate?
All right, Sunlen is going to continue to monitor this hearing for us. I appreciate it, Sunlen. Jason Carroll is live in East Palestine, Ohio right now. Jason, as Norfolk Southern speaks to Congress, what are people there saying about the support of the rail company?
Well, look, there is obviously a great deal of concern here on the ground from residents concerned about the air quality, the water quality, the soil quality. It's not just about the environmental impact and safety, it's also about the economic impact. And we've been speaking to people here who worry about their property values, worry about their businesses. This business that you see behind me, Kate, you see all these blue containers. These containers are used to hold hazardous materials. This factory here is located actually right next to the derailment site. This factory owner says his workers feel so uncomfortable being here that they don't feel like they can safely work here. So this factory, for at least a short time, has basically all but shut down. So that's what he's dealing with. Also spoke to a woman who runs a hair shop here in town. She has lost 50% of her business. She had a specific message to Alan Shaw. Listen to what she had to say.
Right? I don't want to get emotional, but this is my income. This is how I raise my family. Just help us. I haven't gotten any help. I don't want Norfolk Southern to win and take this from me.
So the question for a lot of folks here, Kate, is how do you make homeowners whole? How do you make businesses whole after something like this has happened? Alan Shaw, in his opening statements there, said that he will be here in this community, Norfolk Southern, as long as it takes. And a lot of people just aren't sure that will happen here. They are concerned about their futures. And so as we listen to more about what Alan Shaw says during his testimony, a lot of folks are going to be listening in to see about what specifics are going to be laid out in terms of the long-term economic plans for people here in East Palestine. Kate?
Jason, thank you. Joining me now for more on this is Sarah Feinberg. She's a former acting administrator of the Federal Railroad Administration. It's good to see you, Sarah. Thank you for coming in. I know you were listening into this hearing as it was getting underway as well. What we heard from Alan Shaw, similar to what we've heard before. He laid out an explanation in an opinion piece ahead of the hearing. What do you think of what he's saying? His explanation. Do you think this rail company, that Norfolk Southern, can course correct enough on its own?
Well, look, he's saying all the right things now, right? And any railroad would say all the right things now. You're 4 or 5 weeks after a tragic derailment that's gotten an enormous amount of media attention, an enormous amount of congressional attention. Certainly in the hot seat right now. So I'm not surprised we're hearing, all the right things from him now. It'll be what happens in the future. What are they saying? What are they doing 3 months from now, 6 months from now? And not just Norfolk Southern, but the entire rail industry. And not just that, what is Congress doing? How are they reacting?
I was going to ask you about that because it's hard. It's probably never as easy to say as blame lands in one place. But where do you see it as? Because I was kind of like, who really dropped the ball? Is it the company? Is it the administration? Is it Congress?
So the reality is certainly the railroad is accountable. And certainly they should be held accountable. But the industry as a whole has fought every, even common sense safety regulation tooth and nail for as long as anyone can remember. So this doesn't just go back a couple of years, this goes back decades.
Yeah.
And so when you have an incredibly powerful industry that will fight a safety regulator tooth and nail, it becomes really difficult to be able to get the kind of regulations done that you need to. And then they have a Congress that they can go to that is often very friendly to them, particularly Republicans, but it can be on both sides. And so once the safety regulator actually works, they go to the Congress and they water it down.
The company, they've announced changes. Phil, come in if we need to fix it. We're having an audio issue and we're going to fix it at the very same time. Don't worry, Sarah, we're going to fix it as we continue speaking. The company has announced changes. They've announced changes. They've kind of laid out what they're going to do going forward. We've as Jason and Sunlin were talking about, there's a bipartisan bill that they're pushing in Congress. There's a lot of things that they're talking about. Improved or more heat detectors on the rails, stiffer fines for violations, and so on and so forth. From your view and what you've seen in terms of regulation that's been put on the table and not implemented, is there one thing that must happen in order to improve safety?
I mean, if there's one thing that has to happen in order to improve safety, it's to give the safety regulator more authority. It's to fix the regulatory process, which is completely broken and has been for years. That's not a Biden thing. That's not even a Trump thing. That's not an Obama thing. That is going back all the way to Nixon and Johnson. So that's the kind of issue that if you're going to fix the entire thing, give the safety regulator more authority. I heard some of these senators say at the top of the hearing, safety is our top priority. Alan Shaw says safety is my top priority. Actually, the only person who's really prioritizing safety is going to be the safety regulator.
Are those empty words that you're hearing from members of Congress then and the company?
Look, not all of them.
Because on the other side of this is profit.
Yeah, not all of them. There are some members of Congress who've been on the side of safety for as long as I can remember. But there are some members of the Senate that I heard speaking this morning who are pushing back on regulators, pushing back on the administration, saying, where were you? Those are the same senators who fought regulations for years. I mean, when I was the Federal Railroad Administrator several years ago, we tried to do a braking regulation. The Congress watered it down. We got it done. The Congress watered it down. So it'll be important to hold these members of Congress accountable too.
It just in the immediate, right? Because a lot of this is going to take time. It's going to take political will, and we all know where that kind of ends up quite often. But things can change, but it does take time when you're looking at anything coming out of Washington. In general, from what you've seen and how close you've been to the process, in speaking with the CEOs of these companies and everything that you've seen in terms of regulation, do you think the country's rail system is operating well? Is it operating on a knife's edge all the time as it's going through communities across the country? What is there stopping it from East Palestine happening in Goshen, Indiana, where I grew up?
Nothing. Or Charleston, West Virginia, where I grew up. Nothing. The reality is the rail industry is generally safe. You want to move things, particularly hazardous materials, by rail, not by truck. That said, it can be a lot better, and it's not as safe as it could be. And it would be safer if Congress would stop watering down regulations, if the industry didn't fight every single common sense safety regulation tooth and nail with everything they've got. We can make it much safer.
Interesting. It's great to see you, Sarah.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
You've such an interesting perspective on this that
Anytime.
all of us are just starting to learn more and more about. Thank you.